done it.
You heard
Cool.
it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I love this robotic voices.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, the warmth of technology stuff. Anyway, um, so what we were talking about, so we were saying, okay, this is part two. So we were discussing about that, how I have become vegan and anti-technology. And what about you? How first, let's talk about your vegan experience. How you basically you saw some injustices to animals, and you said this is
Mhm.
disgusting. Huh? When this happened? How this happened?
Yeah, so I, like a lot of vegans, never thought I would go vegan. If you'd have asked me just a couple of years before I was vegan, my opinions on vegans, they would have been really, really poor, even though I wasn't really basing that on much because I didn't really know many vegans. It was just a prejudice that I had. Um, but what happened, my girlfriend from a long time, since we were 16 years old, um, she hasn't eaten animal, well, I say that she'd been pescatarian since an extremely young age, as young as she was old enough to know what an animal was and that she didn't want to necessarily eat them. But only pescatarian, not veggie, not vegan. Sort of out of culture, what was easy, it was easy to be a pescatarian, you know what I mean, especially as a young child. And then you justify it as you grow up with it. So you tell yourself it's different because fish aren't farmed in the same way, even though they typically are. You tell yourself it's different. You say they're less sentient and they don't
Omega
matter as
threes,
much.
omega
Yeah,
threes are healthy. You know.
exactly. You have to find a way to make it work for you. And so she had. But I'd always lived with her, and I continued to eat animals and their secretions and everything like that. But I'd always cared about animals. I don't think you have to be vegan. I certainly spoken to some vegans that don't particularly like non-human animals very much, and they still, don't want to violate their rights. But I knew that I had to make a change, and so I thought what will be incredibly easy is I just copy what my girlfriend does. I'm just going to go pescatarian, and I made that decision. And on the moment that I announced that decision to other people for the very first time, the first thing that came out of their mouth was, well, how is it different to eat fish? And they weren't vegan, they ate all the animals, but they said, how is it different to eat fish than like a cow, whatever? And my answers were crap. They were really crap. It was the same thing. It was like, oh, they're kind of free, and I need to
So
get protein from somewhere. I'm
non-vegans,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
non-vegans acted
Non-vegans
like
totally called me out, like
yeah.
within like seconds of me saying I'm going to go pescatarian. They were like, oh, that's great, but like, it's what's the point? And I just started spewing nonsense, as you do. And so it was only a few months um after that I just knew that I mean, I knew from that moment it didn't make sense, but it took me a couple of months to be like, I need to go vegan.
Mhm.
Luckily, I said that to my girlfriend. I was like, I need to go vegan. It's the only thing that makes any sense. And she was like, cool, I'll do it with you. So I'm really grateful for that. But I was one of those, at that point, I went vegan, but I was one of those incredibly quiet, pick me vegans. I didn't like telling people I was vegan. I didn't want to use the V word. I didn't want to have conversations with people about it.
Mhm.
And I didn't want anyone to judge me or ask me stupid questions or anything like that. And there were two moments that completely changed that for me, because now I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm the most annoying vegan I've ever met now. And
No, not definitely.
so I've gone the opposite way, where I won't shut up about it. So and it works some of the time. But one of them was watching Earthlings. After going vegan, I went on like vegan subreddits, and people kept talking about this film, Earthlings. I was like, I have to watch it. And that made me want to start speaking up.
Mhm.
But one experience that happened to me that really impacted how it made me less selfish about veganism,
Mhm.
was I had a good friend who still is my friend, that I'd known for many years, and she's within the farming industry, the animal farming industry.
Mhm.
And she invited us along to see some lambs, start of spring, end of winter, being born. which I'd never seen before. I was like a towny kid, you know, I haven't really grown up around that. And this was as wholesome as farming gets. It wasn't a big, huge operation factory farm. This was a smallish farm run by lovely people who spent all their time with the animals, caring for them. And when I got there, it was just terrifying how objectified they were regardless. All of these sheep, all pregnant, all at the same time, crowded together incredibly unnaturally. Many, I mean, I'm presuming they'd all been artificially inseminated to achieve that. Many of them pregnant with twins as well, which again I think is something they can select for through artificial insemination. That is actually a bit more rare in nature. It's quite stressful on their bodies. Some of these sheep were prolapsing and had these incredibly crude plastic objects attached to their back, tied to them with string to keep their insides in long enough that they could give birth to these babies. And my friend, who I still love dearly, she goes up to a pen where there's this sheep and a brand new fresh baby lamb, fresh first couple of hours of life, and she picks them up covered in blood from the birth, and turns to me, big smile on her face, and is like, do you want to hold them? Assuming that I will. I'm an animal lover. And I couldn't do it because they had the rubber band around their tail, the rubber band around their testicles as well, you know, to both of those body parts being dropped off. And I thought, if I hold this animal and I then hand them back, knowing, you know, what's going to happen to them in this life, it's just going to be too emotional for me. And I was like, no, I was just like, no, they're gross. But the truth was, I was like, this poor little baby needs saving, and I'm not going to do it. I'm a coward. I'm not going to do anything, and I can't touch them.
Wow.
And I went away from that day and I felt terrible.
Yeah.
And it was that day that changed me from being the selfish vegan who, I'm vegan because it feels right for me, I don't want to abuse animals, but I'm not going to make it anyone else's business, I'm not going to judge anyone, to it's literally got nothing to do with me. It's all about that lamb that I saw today. And I have to say something. So I honestly, if I hadn't have had that experience and I hadn't have then watched Earthlings to kind of reinforce that, because I think I watched Earthlings maybe like a week or so after, just to learn a bit more, I might, you know, I might still be, I'm sure I'd be vegan for the rest of my days, but I might still be that guy that doesn't talk about it, doesn't want to judge people. So
yeah, what you just told is like, I think basically the progression of, like, we can't change just like that over time. And I saw, like, I have talked to some of my friends. I managed to turn them to vegan, and when they newly vegan, let's say 1 month, they don't want to talk about it. I told them, like, you need to talk about this is about animals, and they say, like, I'm worried about this because just very short, like a month ago, I was doing this. So if I start talking about it, it just feels weird. It's like the change is so rapid that, like, I need to adjust to this before. So it's like, it takes time. So it is basically a psychological phenomenon that people just can't go from non-vegan to vegan activist. They need some time to basically accept what they did before, forgive themselves in a way, and transform and say, okay, from now on, I was this, and realize, like, that I'm not this anymore. I'm a new person, and now I can start, you know, on this path that I know this is the truth, and you know, act like the new person. But in between, this thing is basically like, you are silent because you feel guilty. You still didn't transform fully to your vegan self that is saying, you know, I forgave myself, and now the new path, with the truth, and just spreading the truth. And it's the natural part of the process, I think. And the story, that it was really touching, that you can just say like you were vegan in heart, but you just wanted to keep yourself separate, which is most non-vegans do. They just keep being non-vegan, doing exactly this, but you just couldn't do it anymore. You said, this baby, if I just recognize the facts, I need to defend the baby, I need to defend the animals. And you said, okay, you were brave enough, compassionate enough, had enough integrity to say, from now on, I'm vegan, and I'm a vegan activist. And that's a great example of how the transition happens. I think this is true for most people, like most compassionate people. We are like basically brainwashed by the society, and when we realize that we have been brainwashed, it is very difficult to accept. It feels uncomfortable, it feels insecure, because you just realize that this society that you thought that you just supposed to, like, you come out of this and you have to turn your back and say you are wrong. It takes lots of courage, lots of power, it takes time. So
it's difficult to have the confidence to have that as well straight off the bat, because if you've lived your whole life one way, even though you realize how obvious veganism seems to you now, you almost doubt it. A lot of vegans I speak to that don't talk to people, they almost doubt it, because they're like, how can it be that like 95 to 99% of people disagree with me on this? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to open my mouth, because surely they'll prove me wrong. I hear that a lot from vegans, not word for word. I'm kind of making them sound a little bit silly on purpose, but it's this lack of confidence that it's like that there must be something I'm missing. And if I open my mouth, they're going to make me look stupid. But no one should feel like that, because it's they won't.
That's like part of growing up. The kids, when they grow up, if anything goes wrong, they blame themselves, because for the kids everything revolves around them, so they just blame themselves. When the kids grow up, they realize that actually not everything is their fault, and there are faults outside of themselves. So I think this, and when you become vegan, you just basically realize, and anti-technology, by the way, you just realize, look, I don't care about what you do, your culture, your habits or whatever. This is objectively wrong. You have inconsistencies in your behavior, basically logical inconsistencies. And animal rights activists base their activism on that. This is very like Joy Armstrong, Erling Ed, many others. Like when they talk, I have never heard a logical argument against veganism until now. The same way about anti-technology, but anti-technology is not that popular. That's why it's like many people don't know about that. But basically, I have encouraged many people to write arguments against my documentary, like under my documentary. Like I told them, debunk this document. I want the relief knowing that I'm wrong, so I just don't have to do this thing, because this is like really going against the grain, going against everything. The machine is going in this direction. Tell me that this is like something I don't have to inform people about, that I can just live my life, just regular person. But I just there's no arguments, no real arguments. They can say, okay, like if you're against technology, then why are you using technology? We can just say, okay, like even if I use technology, that doesn't mean I'm preventing anything. I'm not preventing, probably I will not be able to prevent the 6-month extinction. I'm just trying, but it doesn't mean that I achieved it,
Sure.
Because, what my concern with this is that we can keep vegan activism separate from anti-technology activism, just being against technology. And if we do that, what are the consequences? Will this be enough? Let's say because basically the purpose of keeping them separate is assuming that one will be successful and the other will not. Right? Because otherwise, if we think that both of them will be successful, we can keep them together in a way. Okay, so then we say, okay, vegans, most people are open to vegan message, so we can change the world. Then promote this vegan activism and keep the anti-technology behind, because if we blend them together, people will say, okay, I'm not buying this because, like, people are not logical thinkers who just that's another thing, that if you just present two truths, some people might just pick one truth, like critical thinkers will say, okay, like there are two messages and I find this truthful, I will accept this, but and the other not. So this is like a perfect world where everyone is critical thinkers and not just reacting with emotion. But from my experience, most people act with emotion, and so
mine too.
yeah. So that's why I see the argument for separating veganism and anti-technology messages. Like,
Sure.
when I say anti-technology, it's like environmentalism in a way, just
Yeah.
but I think anti-technology, more than environmentalism, that just covers even veganism, because, as I said, like, domestication is basically enabled by technological developments, agriculture, domestication, all these things. So to me, animal abuse, exploitation is under the umbrella of technology.
Right.
The cages, when you see trucks driving the livestock, the trucks, basically they are technology. Like, without technology, humans couldn't do that. So it's just
Not on a mass scale, but on an individual level. Getting rid of technology wouldn't address issues of injustice and exploitation towards non-human animals.
Yeah, but it will minimize it, because, like,
Sure.
without that, like, that just comes to the point, like, without technology, basically humans had to turn back to their natural environments, because technology enables humans to live in unnatural environments, unnatural settings. So if you just get rid of technology, we can argue what are they, but I think, like, I have given a definition, that is, technology is anything that is so novel, changing so rapidly that the other biological life forms can't find time to adapt.
Sure. Okay.
So basically, so the livestock can't turn into cucumbers without feelings. They still, animals feel, and they can't, like, there is this harmony there. Without all this technology, we will turn back to natural living, tribal settings. And I think no vegan is against tribes hunting for survival, in a way, that they don't address it, or like, we will be, in a way, part of wildlife without technology. And no vegan is, like, against lions or against, of course, some can say, okay, the setting, that the function that we had thousands or tens of thousands of years before we came up with this technology, it doesn't exist maybe right now. And that means that we are just useless right now. We are just parasites, a virus trying to survive on Earth, but we don't belong here maybe. That might be the case, but still, this is enabled by technology. And I don't, like, some vegans, okay, animal rights activists, they say we should get rid of predators. Lions are bad, wolves are bad, etc. And I made videos about that, saying this is not about murder of animals. This is not about cruelty or something, like, or suffering. This veganism is not about suffering. It is about harmony, because there are in nature, in wildlife, there are things that are necessary to keep it functioning. And you can't say to a lion or a wolf, stop hunting, because basically it collapses the whole ecosystem. It just makes all life like plant-like life. I am prepared a video about this, that without predators, we don't need nervous systems, because our nervous systems is for running away, figuring out the three-dimensional space and time to run, and just we just turn into plants, and that just reduces the, in a way, the sentience.
Yeah. Okay.
So without predators, we just basically say kill all the animals, basically. So vegans shouldn't be against wildlife, predators, lions, etc.
I think you're right that obviously in terms of practicality, most vegans aren't against nature and predators and stuff. But if they were being hypothetical, I think logically most vegans would be, because they would, in terms of if they were to design a world, presumably anyone that would aspire towards veganism would design a world without suffering. I mean, that gets a little bit deep if you want to talk about the pros and cons of such a world. But I think most people would, at the drop of a hat, without having to think about it much, that would be the choice they'd go for. And in terms of predators, there's certainly, and I'm not advocating for the that vegans start running out and start killing predatory animals at all. But the argument that we're being selective in our compassion, and also in a way being speciesist by not being anti-predator, I can see the grounds to it. I can see why I would defend someone that I cared about, and it wouldn't have to be within my species. It's not that I'm just defending myself, but even if it was another non-human animal I cared about and I defended them from a predator, I think I'd be justified in doing that for the same reasons that I choose to be vegan. It just gets really messy when you try to scale everything up. That's the problem. I think it's when you think about in terms of these big grand ideologies that it becomes really difficult to say, what is right in this situation. Because in the small scale, I'd like I say, I defend someone from predators because I defend their rights.
Let's keep in mind this small scale.
Yeah. Okay.
So
well, yeah, go on. That's my only point really, is that I can see the basis for it all.
And it all makes sense. Like in my ideology, whatever, like in my thoughts, everything makes sense. So there is no paradoxes or anything. It's all in harmony. All my ideas I consider are quite in harmony with each other. And so basically, imagine, okay, so you said we shouldn't kill the predators, lions, but if you saw a gazelle, let's say, being killed by a lion, if you can prevent it, you feel that you should do it.
I feel that I would, and I think if I commit to saying that I feel that I should, then I would have to be anti-predator. That's the point that I'm saying, and that's where my conflict is. That's why I'm so undecided on this.
The conflict only resolves when you accept that you don't belong there. If you go to a safari with your jeep and you are there observing that, you don't belong there. And if you don't belong there, you shouldn't be there, and the conflict just resolves. Leave the nature. So basically what I'm saying is that humans are basically the problem. It is that humans go and intervene. Humans, with their arrogance, they want to change something. Like the arrogance can be with good emotion, like good intentions or bad intentions, whatever, but you just don't belong there in such a huge populations. Maybe some tribes, they were, they could just intervene, and it didn't make a huge difference with the wildlife setting. But basically, as I said, if everyone just imagine a world population, a hypothetical situation that we are like 1 trillion people here, and everyone can just observe it, we are like wildlife, they go to safaris and just prevent lions hunting on deer or something like gazelle. Basically, the whole ecosystem will collapse. And as I said, like, we will wipe out ourselves too. Everything will turn into plant-based life, because as I said, predators are necessary to keep the fit, like to the brain health, the neurological system fit and developing within prey populations, and eventually within predator populations, because without chasing, without running around, you don't need neurological systems. Plants are okay with it. So basically, you just reduce all the sentience to plant life without that. So that's why I'm saying that wildlife predators, they're not the problem. They're the murder. They're yin and yang, you know, just two sides of the same coin. Without one, the other doesn't exist. So you have just like the Zen philosophy, which is, I think, very wise, that you need death to build on it as life. So if there is life, there is death. If there is death, there is life. But the problem arises from disharmony, not just because death exists. It is, as I said, like fundamental part of existence. But basically, we are just changing so rapidly that we are just disrupting the harmony with ourselves too. Let's say when we go to safari and see, because we don't belong there, we disrupt our minds, feeling not okay, and then we want to disrupt the ecosystem. That's I think most people just don't think about it. Like, they don't even say that it is wrong for me to be here, and just, you know, thinking like this, and maybe just doing something about it. Or
the arrogance is real for sure.
yeah, it's
like
terrible.
completely.
So the anti-technology and basically animal exploitation, they're all arrogance. Like, in simple terms, it's human arrogance that we say we can do better, we know better, and we will just intervene. We will intervene in nature, we will change it to make it suitable for us. We will intervene in animals, we will change them, domesticate them to make them suitable for us. Like, everything we go and we say, this must be like that, just with ignoring, but by ignoring the wisdom of millions of years of evolution of like nature. And we just came, like, we live 80 years, 90 years, and a human can accumulate so much information within that lifetime. And there is, okay, scientific books, when they were the first book, when they appeared, and when the science really started to develop, it's a couple of thousands of years ago, right? And think about this new thing being so arrogant, that saying that says that, okay, this is the thing now, the science and technology, we know better, we will just, I don't like this, I don't like that. Who are you to do this? You know what I mean? So that's my point with anti-technology and animal rights. We are not supposed to, we shouldn't be doing this. This is not natural. This is just an addiction. Like, I define all these things that is out of harmony is basically addiction. Our lifestyles, everything we do is addiction, basically. Like, if you go up north, it is cold, you need to build a house and burn lots of fuel to heat your house. And I say, this is an addiction, because you can't live without it. You would be uncomfortable without it. And we have created so many addictions that, you know, in the addiction, we just think about the short-term benefits without thinking about the long-term consequences. And this is exactly what's going on with, you know, it's not good for our health. Let's say for animals, consuming animal products, it's not good for the animals. It's not good for our health. It's not good for the environment. And there's not a chance, because that's basically out of harmony, and harmony is as a whole under a big umbrella. And we just don't say, okay, like, what's this then? Why am I doing this? And it's the same, the answer is the same as an alcoholic or a cocaine addict is doing. Just momentary pleasure, and it is not natural. You know, it's just cocaine or alcohol. They're just new novel inventions that disrupt the natural balance of their bodies, and they become dependent on it. And they just say, you know, I feel okay with this, like a shortcut, but it's basically not healthy. It is not supposed to be like this. They don't think about the long-term consequences or anything. It's just keep going with it as long as it goes. That's the mindset of an addict. And I think this whole humanity as a whole, I mean, people like you, people like me, are the thoughts of an alcoholic saying, you know, I think we shouldn't be doing this. I think we should just quit this. You know, every addict person, every alcoholic, every cocaine addict, they have these thoughts in their minds saying,
True.
I should quit this. This is not good. I'm suffering. We are these cells in the brain of the humanity, you know, like individual cells saying, you shouldn't be doing this. Listen to me, please listen to me. And we know the addicts, either they heal somehow by some traumatic event, or they just keep going with their addictions, and they just end up in a very bad place.
Yeah.
I see many.
I love that metaphor. This metaphor. That was fantastic.
Yeah, I see many parallels with that, and like, you know, like Joy. Let's give Joey Carbstrong as an example to this. That he was in you know, gangs, and he had a very difficult life, and he was basically selfish, caring about himself, and just trying to survive in this gang situation, right? And then basically, but he had compassion in his heart. Basically, maybe his mother or family or parents, someone gave him this compassion, and he didn't know better. But then they put him in jail, and he had to change. And what he realized that this world is not just about him. He was like selfish. He was saying, I need to survive in this world. And then they just showed the trauma showed him, okay, you basically, you're not that important. We can just put you in jail, right? And this just took his arrogance in a way, that the self-centered view, and said, if this is not about me, what is it about? You know, they're like, if I can be put in these situations, then what are my new values? I can't say I am the, you know, the guy who are going out and surviving and fighting. They can do this to me, and what's in my new value? And new value is like basically expanding yourself, right? He had to come up with new value systems, and I think this expansion is what creates vegans. Like when we are kids, our worlds are, as I said, small. Whatever happens to us, we just think that it's our fault because we are egoistic. Basically, naturally, kids are self-centered, and as we grow, our world expands. And many people, unfortunately, I think they are stuck in childhood. They can't just grow and expand themselves, caring about animals, caring about nature. And sometimes trauma helps with this, just by crushing your false illusions that you are the center of the universe. When it's crushed, it just shows you around and says, look, you need to find new values. And I think that happened with Joy Cardstrong. and
Mhm.
it's an important process. Maybe I'm not saying that like crush everyone and just like put them in prison or something, but if
Yeah.
you're compassionate, if you're in the right way, you don't need to suffer from this. But if you are really cruel person and just selfish and I am the arrogance that they have, like
Mhm.
I am the center of the universe. Maybe sometimes something that has to happen to you to just realize you are not.
Yeah, otherwise they are incapable of empathizing because
Yeah,
they don't know what it's like to be, well, they can't relate to the
yeah.
victim whatsoever.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's fully true. Uh, and it's kind of sad in a way. It's kind of
Yeah,
miserable that that is true. That we're not naturally just a bit more capable of being where we need to be without relating back to it to ourselves.
yeah. First of
Yeah,
all, some compassion needs to be given to you to when you are a kid. I